Welcome to the Joy Hour podcast. So excited in the studio today. Dr. Damien Nesser is a guest on the show along with Sam Geiger and just a couple of fine gentlemen. Both have incredible backgrounds and together have written a book that I'm excited to hear more about today is Bloom Where You Are. And Damien, if you could just jump in and tell the audience about the book.
So 3 years ago, I actually decided to move from Florida back home to Pittsford, New York, which is upstate New York. Shout out to the upstate New York area. Pittsford, not Pittsburgh. A lot of people say it's Pittsburgh, but it's Pittsford. And really quaint town, kind of upper middle class, and went to school with Darcy Glazer, who's the owner of the Buccaneers in high school, and we hung out. And it's a nice place to live. Came back. My brothers were like, "You're gonna what?" Well, I'm gonna take care of Mom. I'm moving back, and I'm giving up my dean and counselor. They couldn't figure out what to do with me in Florida, whether to make me a dean or counselor, so they split me in two. I was a dean and a counselor. So when kids would come in my office 3 years ago, I would comfort them with a tissue in the morning, being a counselor. In the afternoon, I'd suspend them. Didn't work out too well. But so I decided to resign from my job, sell my house after struggle. It wasn't easy, but I knew God wanted me to do it. For those of you who are faith-based, God wanted me to do it. I was on a bike ride, and he said, "You need to go help your mom, honor your mom." And those of you that are, whether you're Christian or not, if you honor your parents, your life's going to be blessed. And that's a fact.
Right.
So I did, moved back, and my oldest brother, Joe, who's a family court judge, really has a lot of time has a black and white opinion of this is the way it is. There's no in between because he's a judge. He said, "You're going to what?" I said, "I want to move back home and help Mom." "You're going to help Mom go on the toilet 15 times a day. If you can tell me that you're going to do that, then you can come," pretty much. I said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." He goes, "Okay, I'm going to tell Mom." So when I got home, long story short, fast forward, as soon as I entered Pittsford, New York, I went to a nursing home, a local nursing home where Mom had a knee replacement. And they were talking in the room about Bruno, my pit bull, who's now 15. He was 13 back then. Or no, wait, actually 12. And Joe said, "Bruno is Damien's son." Mom said, Celia, who raised 5 sons, married for 48 years, has 10 grandkids, 1 great-grandchild, said, "Oh no, he's not he's bringing that pit bull? He's bringing a pit bull in my house? You have to be out of your mind, Mom. He's bringing him in. His name is Bruno, and that's Damien's son." So that's what I'm hearing when I first get home after, 22 hours of driving, right? So I enter the room, and she says, "Oh, hi, honey." So it's like typical Italian mom who just wants to love her kids. And you know what? Long story short, we actually named a chapter after Bruno, Mom's furry angel. And for the dog lovers out there, before Sam chimes in, because he knew Bruno, their intuitiveness, I have research in the book as well. We have research in the book as well. Bruno, before Mom hit stage 6, before she hit stage 7, there's 7 stages of dementia. We talk about it in chapter 2 of the book. Bruno would go back and forth from the couch looking at Mom, from the couch to the fridge, about, 25 feet maybe. All day long, people would feed him. My brothers would come, cousins would come, friends would come. Everybody loved Bruno, right? Like everybody loves Raymond, everybody loved Bruno. They didn't care about me or my mother sometimes. "Oh, Bruno, how you doing?" Right? So, but when Mom hit latter stage of 6, the cognitive mindset was really slow, extremely slow. Her her speech was slurred. Bruno barely left her side, maybe 3 times a day compared to 15. Compare that with the research that I put in the book, right, Sam? Amazing. The intuitiveness of a dog, not just a pit bull, although pit bulls are really intelligent and they're very, very misunderstood. I put that on social media and it was a firestorm because there's a divided, there's a divide like Niagara Falls,
probably
right,
the most
pit bulls, right, Sam?
radicalized opinion on a dog.
So yeah,
and I will say I think animals just naturally are a little more intuitive than people, just especially when it comes to health and the way people are feeling and their state of being. You know, I feel like you could come home from a hard day at work and your pet knows right away whether or not they need to give you space or they need to give you comfort. You know.
Yep. So with that said, me coming home, what am I going to do? All my friends are telling me their parents or so-and-so's parents had dementia for 10 or 15 years. How am I going to survive, right? So all this fear is welling up inside me. And all of a sudden, I realize, hey, I have to reinvent myself. How am I going to reinvent myself? So for the listeners that don't know, I was an educator for 28 years. And while I was taking care of my mom, I became a life design coach, started a foundation, mentored Sam from suicide to success, was born with cerebral palsy. He has dyslexia. The odds are against us, right? So I'm not the smartest individual in the world. I have 5 college degrees, and I'm saying that not to toot my own horn, but I'm a tenacious worker. I will outwork anybody, right? I'm going to outwork a bee on top of a flower, getting that pollen, right? So I'm going to get it done. So if you give me a focus, I'm going to get it done. So with that said, foundation, podcast on Apple. Now we're on all platforms, season 4, book, mentoring Sam, taking care of family, fighting through family dynamic. Fighting is not the right word. Coping through and strategically working through, which we talk about in the book, family dynamic coaching pages, right? Right, Sam? And Sam,
yes,
Sam comes through family dynamic as well, and blending the two together, because backing up, even before, how should I say this? In the midst of all that, okay, I'm taking care of my mom full time, getting paid peanuts. So I'm doing all this. That's why the book is called Bloom Where You Are. And I'm mentoring Sam, whose brother was tenaciously pursuing me to mentor Sam. Dr. N, could you mentor my brother? We're both deans together in a middle school. What do you mean? Well, he's going through depression. Well, what kind of depression? Well, he's brilliant. He built my computer, but he doesn't have confidence in himself. Well, what's he doing now? He's not really doing nothing. I'm trying to get him a job at King Middle School. So he got him a job at King Middle School, and he's a teacher assistant, right? Fast forward 4 years, he graduated with his AA degree, right, Sam? In computer science or liberal arts?
Just a standard AA. With
standard AA, but now he's working on a computer degree. And he's on the precipice of entering the police academy. And I used to use the word proud. I don't use that anymore. I use the word happy, because Winona Judd, who I work for as a nanny, and can you believe this? 22 years ago, I was a nanny and teacher for Winona Judd's kids, Grace and Elijah. And Elijah and Grace are doing well. And I love you, Winona. Little shout out. And I hated country music before I met her. And then when I was on the bus tour for several bus rides, you know how I woke up, Tom, every morning? She would just sing to me. Well, those of you that didn't see, I just fly out of the bed, and they were comfortable. The bus beds, very comfortable. But Sam, I'm motivated every day from Sam. When I get depressed, and everybody does. And if somebody says, well, I never get depressed. No, everybody gets depressed. Everybody gets down. We got to pick ourselves up. Whatever you do in the morning. I have bike rides with the Bible, bike rides with music, bike rides. I love bike riding in the morning. If I don't do that and get my mindset right, my day's awful. I'm just being honest. There's no in between. It's just horrible, and I just got to hide myself from people because I'm not going to react in a proper way to help people and make a difference. So with that said, the platform of helping Sam has just showed so much courage and fortitude, and he's come from a tough situation. Sam, the mentoring that I did with you, I know your background. Tell Tom and our audience, his audience, what background you come through, and even you can integrate your mom's book, because his mom's book, I couldn't put it down, and I read it. What was it, 4 hours, Sam? I must have read it in 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Just chime in a little bit about the book, because Tom and the audience are going to be amazed what your mom went through and what you had to kind of grow up with.
I suppose because it is a bit of a long story.
Well, shorten it up and just tell them the main facts.
But the short of it is, I grew up in a family that was 2 older brothers, very, very Christian family. With we actually grew up in the Jehovah's Witness organization, and that when my mother and father separated, that created a huge rift within the family, with my mother wanting to separate from my father because of an abusive relationship that was unhealthy for her. And I decided at 7 years old that I wanted to live with my mother while my older brothers lived with my father. And I was raised pretty much exclusively by my mother, with an occasional visit to see my father. And being raised by my mother, she had mostly working nights, so I didn't really see her all that often, and I raised myself for the she was she was a very good mother. She worked very hard to make sure that I was healthy, and every opportunity she could, she'd do anything she could to spend time with me and support me. But as a result of me going to school during the day and then her needing to sleep usually when I was home from school or while I was at school, and then she would work in the evenings when I'm home, a lot of the time I had to learn to be very independent from an early age. And that independency kind of grew onto, I didn't tend to rely on other people, and as a result I was very alone, because I didn't learn how to put my faith in other people and share the burden, which I don't think is healthy for a lot of people. I think the reason we build communities and we build relationships is because we need to have other people to support us, and it took me a long time to learn that.
He's come a long way.
And I think with that, for a very long time, even though I would live with other people, I had roommates, I would almost never share anything that I believed to be a burden or that would be a burden on other people. I would never share that with other people. And that led to, I think, a very big buildup of negative feelings and things that I never actually addressed. I ended up just bottling everything away. And when I was 19, it all came out at once, and I had an attempt at suicide. And after that, that was when I realized that I really needed to figure out what was going on with my own feelings, what I wasn't addressing, and I needed to learn how to essentially figure myself out. And that was even 4 years prior to me, or 3 years prior to me meeting Dr. Nesser. And even in the next 3 years, I believe I learned who I was in that period, but I still didn't learn how to be happy, or I didn't find what it was, or I should say, I didn't give myself permission yet to be happy. And once I met Dr. N, that was when I think I really started to learn that it's okay to confide in others. It's okay to share the burden. It's okay to let other people help me. and it was okay to give myself the permission that I needed to be able to grow as a person and find what it was that I wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Tom, can
So
you
Marco,
relate to any
yeah.
of that from your? Um, I'm just curious, and I didn't expect to ask you this,
Yeah.
but can you relate to anything? Just branch off of what Sam said from his upbringing, because I can't relate to that with the upbringing I had. Our family was far from perfect, but my parents
Mhm.
were just always there for us, and married for 48 years, and they were there, and I couldn't imagine them not being
Yeah.
there. And Sam grew up on the opposite pendulum of, hey, I got to do this gig by myself a lot. Can you relate to that, Tom, or was your upbringing more on my side of, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it, upper middle class, mom and dad were there. When I'm walking off the bus up the driveway, I could smell mom's sauce, or I could smell food coming out of the kitchen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of thoughts going through my head right now, and I love this learning about both of you. Sam, uh, something you mentioned there, I think so many of us have done is bottle things up. And actually, I chose this shirt today, uh, just had it made, but it's how are you feeling? And there's 144 words on this feelings wheel. And so,
144.
as a man that
Mm-hmm.
different words, right? Everything from starting with joy and anger and fear and love, going into, deeper words of, optimistic and eager, or you're over here at jealous or
Cool.
resentful or anxious or overwhelmed, or there's all kinds of
Hmm.
words,
Mm-hmm.
emotions, they're real. And all of my life, I bottled them up. And as I got into alcohol, I bottled them up in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. So I never talked about my feelings, my emotions. I'm a tough contractor, supposedly. And I did that for 42 years of my life,
Your
43 years
dad
of my
had a
life.
construction company. How'd you get into construction?
Yes. So tiny school all my life, graduating class of 2 people in my high school. So work was my sport. Work was my thing. I mean, I used to work every weekend, every chance I got. At 17 years old, I started full time and I worked
Wow.
80 hours a week, most of my
Well,
late
that's
teens and early
incredible.
20s, doing wood framing. It was all piecework. So the more I work, the more I make. So I moved out when I was 17 and yeah, just became a workaholic. And then, of course, alcohol and drugs came in, and then it stopped, and then it started again later in life. But touching on the depression word and feelings is two things I picked up on in both your stories, and they're dear to my heart in, knowing that so many men and women too, but I think men do struggle to find a safe place and a safe circle on where to share that without it just
Mm-hmm.
backfiring. If you go to another man or maybe a group of 2 or 3 men and you start to open up and say, hey, every Saturday I deal with depression and trying to get out of it, guys. But how do I deal? And you start talking, and they just blow
Yeah,
you
toughen up.
off,
Come on,
or
man. That kind of.
yeah, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. You're like, all right, and so that wall starts to get built because it's the wrong environment,
Yeah.
the
Very
wrong
true.
group of men, and they're not ready for
Very
that
true.
type of discussion. But when you find the safe circle of at least one, if not 2 or 3 men, or you can talk to on a weekly basis, or they're a phone call away when you're going, hey, I might not be jumping off the bridge, but for some reason I'm at the top of the bridge thinking about
Yeah.
jumping off the bridge, and I'm going to
Right.
call somebody before I actually
Hmm.
jump,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means in
Yeah.
our state of depression or our feelings and our emotions, and how we cope with them, whether people choose alcohol or substance or pills or medication or pornography or sex or food or any of these things that you can use. I was watching something today about the impact of social media and how it releases dopamine, and so many people just scroll and scroll, and it
Yeah.
releases so much dopamine that then our body tries to create more dopamine. And I can't repeat it as good as the thing is that I
No, we
watched,
get
but
it. Yeah, that's true.
looking more and more into that
Very true.
in my life. Yeah, and it's like really deep down, what do I want? I want these type of conversations. I mean, I'm just getting to know you guys, and already I know it's a safe place to talk about these type of discussions of suicide, depression, anxiety, fear, because most all of these issues derive from
Yeah.
fear,
And,
fear of
and
rejection,
yeah,
fear of
exactly
abandonment,
right.
fear of failure.
And for 30 years, not with the phone, but phone came in early 90s. It was big and it got smaller. But when the
Yeah,
kids come to me, or
your car would
yeah,
honk when
exactly.
it started
When
ringing.
the kids come to me in the office and they'll say, Dr. N or parents, and I can immediately say, everyone's looking at their phone. They're not even looking at each other. They're like this. Like you can always tell when you go to a restaurant if people are on a first date. They're like this. People that aren't looking, they're staring at their phone. They're looking at the people across the table for a brief second, and then looking at the phone for 3 seconds. So that's not good numbers, because
I've actually genuinely, I have been on dates with people and I have walked out of the date because they spent too much time looking at their phone. And my thought is, this is your first impression with somebody is to spend so much time, and it's like, I'm
That's
sure
right.
you're a nice person, but I can't have a connection with somebody like
good
that.
advice.
And I think that at least, you know, maybe it'll change in the future. Maybe you this is something that but to me it doesn't seem like you're ready for a relationship.
No, that's right.
If that's
But what I was going to elaborate on was they go to that look down on the phone because that's fear, that's insecurity, that's all in the book. We have the coaching pages, we have the downloadable journal, not just for seniors. It's anybody that's going through situations. I mean, we're how do I say this? I didn't even hear the word 22 years ago when I worked for an individual. I didn't even know what dysfunctionalism was because I never heard it in my family. And then when my parents passed, it amplified and went up. The dysfunctionalism that was hidden, it's in every family. I don't care if you're pastors. I don't care if you're, maybe it's a little less in certain families, to one pendulum to the other, A to Z, let's say, you know, M being in the middle. Every family, wouldn't you say, Tom, has dysfunctionalism for one sense of the word, because it's hidden. And when people, or a mom or a father or a mother or an aunt or a guardian dies, someone significant in your life, it amplifies, comes out, and then all, as they say, all hell breaks loose. That happens. That happened partly in our family. That happened in cousins' families. That's happened in friends' families. And people are scared to talk about it. I didn't know what anxiety was growing up. Did you, Tom? Did you have a counselor coming to you and saying, Tom, guess what, Tom Lehman, you need to do this, that, and the other thing because you're going through anxiety right now? I didn't have anybody tell me that. I didn't know what anxiety was. Sam did, because he had in his generation at 26. I'm 56.
It was, and it's one of those things where I was aware of it. So, and I think because of the way my mind works, I was open to, not just understanding it and learning about it, but seeing the patterns in myself that I think a lot of people will deny, especially when they're depressed. They'll deny that they're depressed or unhappy, or they're the opposite, where they'll really believe that they're depressed and unhappy, and they'll immediately go to the extreme solution of like lots of medication or some other I guess not necessarily a crutch, but some other source to help believe it without understanding what it is.
Tom, how you're hearing him talk right now?
To get to the root of it.
Sam, excuse me, I have to say this because you're blowing my mind right now because you've come such a long way. Tom, how Sam is talking right now, when we did the first couple episodes, I'd say the first 5 or 6 episodes, he was a lot more on the quiet side. His elaboration, and this is for young people, don't let fear hold you back. Fear is awful, because fear stops you from accomplishing, if you believe in God, it stops you from accomplishing what God wants you to do, God's best. Because God's not second rate, he's number one. whether you believe in him or not, or a higher power. Some people believe in higher power. That's great.
Yeah.
If God's not your cup of tea, you believe in the higher power, you're not going to reach your fullest potential unless you overcome fear. Right, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think with fear, the word that also comes into play here is normal. You know, you hear people when you're growing up, that family's normal, or you hear the word weird. You know, that family's weird. What if we said instead, you know, humanity used the word different, and it was almost a compliment because God made us different. What if we were all the same? What if we all had the exact same white picket fence, the exact same amount of siblings, the exact same education, the exact same view on everything? We'd be robots.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Life
Like,
would be
it's
boring.
beautiful that we're different. There are entrepreneurs, there are employers, there's employees, there's landlords, there's tenants, it works. That's what makes the world. There's mechanics and there's doctors and there's janitors and there's veterinarians and there's contractors, and nobody should be ever viewed or view themselves, most importantly, as any better or any worse than each other. And I taught a lesson 20 years ago to a bunch of teenagers, and I just said, what if the world had no garbage men?
It'd be very
Nobody
stinky, I can
cares
Yeah,
say.
about
that'd be a mess. Be a disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
On the flip side, too, what if the world had no doctors? And they're just like looking at me like, where's he going? And I don't know. I think it was a good lesson. I learned a lot from it, but it really teaches the importance of when we meet each other to say, hey, I want to know about you. I want to know about your childhood. And because I've even learned in this short amount of time from both of you, you both have a deep connection with mom. And so many of us, we have deep connections with moms, and maybe we do have some father issues through the years because of how life unfolded. It doesn't make us any not normal and who cares if it is different than somebody else? Like, this is our story. This is our life. Write a book about it and love it and live in the moment and break all that fear. You know, take the guilt and shame. And, you know, for that group, I feel like there's two different people in the world, two different mindsets in the world. Is people that get it and people that don't. Hopefully someday they do, but they might not get it till they're on their deathbed. And that's sad. You know, if you don't really wake up and realize, you know what, I'm glad we have garbage men, and I respect them as much as I do the doctor and everything in between. And we start to treat, and same thing with races and nationalities and all that. If we could truly view each other and look at each other's hearts and then listen to each other's stories. Now, I want to know more about your relationship, and can't wait to get your book to read the depth of your relationship with your mom, Dr. N. I mean, for you to make the choice to stop your career path to do something like that with your mom, that's what I respect. That's what I look to as a man going, hats off to him, and that's what I would want to do. And my mom just 2 days ago got surgery and got that much taken out of her skin, and she goes in next week for her face and 5 different spots. They're removing things in her face. She had hip surgery last year. She needs knee surgery. She's 76, and I lost my dad 6 years ago to colon cancer, which was the hardest thing I won't go into right now. But you know, when you look back at, you know, this, thank you, and I want to do better. You know, our culture needs to do better. Other cultures, I think, they're still there for their parents like we should be. But hats off to you, Dr. N,
you
for
brought
doing
that up,
that.
and one of the chapters in the book is going from, you know, son to companion to friend. If young people out there, I wish I had more time to go into it, but delving into this topic of relationship, you know, the family dynamic of son to mom, or father to son, or daughter, vice versa, doesn't matter, or daughter to father. There's so many layers, but if you can get to the point where you can go from a son or daughter to companion and then to friend, greater love, no one has known greater love than this, than a man lay his life down for his friend. And that's not only the Bible, but that's a principle that I've done for Sam. And Sam, you only do what you know. Like the shadows, I'll never forget this, and it'll stick with me for the rest of my life. And this will sum everything up, what we're talking about now. One pastor said to me, Damien, don't ever forget this. The shadows of your upbringing will follow you for the rest of your life. good or bad. You can either turn those shadows of upbringings to positive, or you can let them bury you, saying regret or guilt or how come they didn't do this, and resentment, right, Tom?
Yeah, yeah. Resentment will eat you up too, and comparison is the thief of joy, and I think that's where social media has messed us up. We think somebody else's life is just great, and all their family members are in perfect health, and they don't have any dysfunctionality
And they
in
don't
their
want to
family
admit it.
at all. Look,
And
it
they
just
don't
looks
want to
like
admit it.
roses. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But normalizing these conversations and taking away the stigma, I believe there's a lot happening in the last year or so. I think the more research that comes out with the damage of social media and how it's misused, video games, how they're misused, those type of things, and really getting people back to that connection. There's no age that we get to where we love being alone and lonely all the time, and anxiety comes. Isolation always makes it worse. But when we connect, and I think of the young kids and how many hours a week they might spend looking at a screen compared to being on the teeter totter or the park like we did growing up, building the tree fort, maybe even getting into a little bit of innocent trouble where
that's
you
100%.
did something, maybe like broke a window and then you had to get a job and pay to fix the window. I mean, I'd rather my kids get into that type of trouble than spend all day looking at pornography or something, right? So if you look at like how we grew up, Dr. N, 56 years old, 46 years old,
26 years
totally
old.
different. Somebody,
Well, and think of the perspective too for screen time. Screen time used to be, family members would gather in front of the TV to watch a program together, and that was a way of another form of gathering. Sam. But now screen time is almost exclusively reserved to escapism. It's a way to get away from the reality of the world.
That's right. Great point.
So even if you had 3 or 4 family members in the same room, they're all on their own devices. Look, no, it's definitely been, I've just termed it in my own conversations with people around town or podcasts and things is, we talk about fentanyl and meth. They're horrible drugs. They're killing people. I get that.
No,
it's tragic.
It's rampant. It's
This
rampant
is
in the United States.
Biggest drug.
Fentanyl is rampant. It's all over. And my brother Joe was giving me all kinds of, he's a family court judge in upstate New York, and he was given some statistics and different things that our government is guilty of. And I don't even get in politics on the podcast at all. Sam knows that. For me to even mention government
I don't either.
Not taboo, but I don't like to get involved because I have family members that are Democrat. I have family members that are Republican, and no one's going to win. And everybody tries to take their, prove why they're right instead of coming to a resolution. Right. So it's really sad.
But what if we? It is. What if we could change the way each other felt? And I go to fentanyl, I go to this, and people even use this to change the way they feel, right? The addiction to phones, the overusage of phone. There's nothing wrong with the phone if you use it properly, but the overusage and the saturation is what we're talking about. But what if instead of us going to our phone or a drug or an alcohol to change the way we feel, what if we could see each other and see what's going on in depth with another friend, another family member, anybody you're around, any time of the day? And what if we could change the way each other felt by saying, I really like your shirt. I really like your hat.
And that could happen if kids, if Sam knows, because we talk about it all the time. I'm actually going to do a post on it tomorrow, is if you take time to create healthy boundaries, you're going to produce healthy relationships. And that solves a lot of that issue, because if you have boundaries, you're limiting yourself. The phone's not bad, but the misuse of the phone and blowing your parents off and not listening to teachers when you're supposed to be learning and texting your friends in the classroom when you're supposed to be listening to the teacher, right? American education, you know what? I'm going to say it. American education, one of the best things they could do is make sure that kids can't use their phones during the day, whatever that looks like, however they do it, because the phone takes so much of our time. Just wait, especially because kids, I'm not gonna say all kids, because what percent of kids don't know boundaries? I don't know, but it's hard to adults a lot of times don't know boundaries, whatever percent that is, let alone kids. So when the kids have a phone, they have something that, well, the first computer, you know that, Tom, was the size of I don't know what building, right? Now we have a phone that has the same power production, right, Sam? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean,
oh my word! I'm thinking about a computer the size of a building when it was first invented, and now we've got hundreds of times that power. And now with the power of the internet, we have so much accessibility to all kinds of information, including misinformation. And I mean, it's amazing what our phones are capable of, but it is so easy to abuse them.
Yeah, it's
Another thing that comes to mind is whenever I ask you a question, there's so many things I could ask you about your life and your career path and the education. Both of you have done college. I actually haven't. I could sit here for hours and ask you questions about what was it like to be in college, or what was it like to get your AA, or right? I could ask you questions and we could build a relationship as I ask you. But if I feel like your answer is going to be, oh, just go to YouTube, and you send me, so to speak, to YouTube to learn instead of to learn through you, then it takes the relationship out. Like, why should you ask me about being a contractor? Just get on YouTube and learn. Like, everybody's supposed to know everything and be an expert in every area, because ask Alexa, ask Siri, go Google. And
now it's
that's
AI.
really broken down that vulnerability. Right. So now I'm going to look stupid if I ask you, so how did you get your degree? How many credits was that? I'm going to look like an idiot if I ask you that question, because I'm already supposed to know, because it's all free public access on the internet.
Which I think,
and so it's broken down the desire to ask
absurd
questions.
concept.
It is.
The idea that, and I've confronted this a lot, especially in my generation, where I'll ask something and almost always the first response, instead of them giving a clear, quick explanation, is, oh, here's this video, check it out. And that to me is a very big, it's discouraging, especially if I want to get to know that person. I feel like, well, there's already a block that a hurdle that I'd have to overcome. And what then is going to be the payoff when it comes to me investing my time and trying to get this individual to open up and communicate and, work with me like an actual person, versus, when is there going to be enough interaction? Is there going to be enough value in this relationship, or are they just going to be another person who's just repeating back?
And part of the reason why we have the title of the book, Bloom Where You Are, last point, is because X percent, whatever percent that is, of our young people, a lot of young people know how to critically think, because that's what we're really talking about. There's so many kids that come in my office, parents, Dr. N, can you help me? What's wrong? Can you close the door? Sure. Is this off the record? Sure. How do I help my kids? And they have kids 12, 13 years old. And I won't say clueless, but they don't know their kids. Why? Because they're not interacting like Sam said, and like you brought up, and the interaction helps everyone to critically think and develop healthy, boundary-filled relationships that are healthy, that blossom, so you can bloom where you are, so that when problems come, and that's life. Man is born into the world as the sparks fly upward. That's a scripture for the Christian people that know from the book of Isaiah. We're born into trouble. There's going to be trouble. You need to learn to work through trouble, and it's critically thinking. And our generation, Tom, thought, even though I'm 10 up on you, thought a lot more, because I remember hanging out in a treehouse. How many kids in this generation, in Sam's generation at 26, hang out in a treehouse, Sam?
Well, and I feel like I am in the generation, or I'm at the age, because I am exactly between the millennial and the Gen Z generation.
You are.
That is,
Yes,
I
you
am
are.
dead center on that transfer over. and I had two older brothers who were millennials, and I feel like I am the age group where I actually saw when people stopped. And that was when cell phones, internet, and all of that became extremely accessible, because I remember when I was, 6, 7 years old, it would be me and my friends hanging out in my treehouse in the backyard with maybe some like Transformer
Yeah.
toys or our
Yeah.
Game Boys, and we would be playing games, hanging out with each other on in the treehouse, to going to 12 years old, and now we're all in our own individual houses talking over online, but we live across the street from each other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was lucky in that my best friend grew up across the street from me. So anytime we had the chance or the opportunity, we would get together and we would do stuff in person, because it was always more fun. But I think for the people who didn't have that accessibility, they lost the interest at a very young age to put in the effort to actually get together
Good point.
and do stuff in person and have fun, because now there was a much more convenient method right in front of them.
Yeah. So well said. And I think trust is also built when two people are talking face to face, because we can read each other's
Yeah.
body
Mhm.
language. I heard something, and I might have the percentages off, but it was, 20% of what we say is our words, 20 or 30% is our tone, and like 60% is our body language.
Mhm.
And you think, if you ask me a question via the phone and all I do is send you a link to a video, Sam, like, we didn't have tone, we didn't have body language, we didn't really have connection.
No.
Like, it just destroyed all of that. But when you do meet somebody face to face and carve out that time and be intentional, then we can really rebuild and grab a hold of those relationships, because it's not really what we're
Not at all.
saying a lot of times, it's what we're not saying.
Well, and I think even for a lot of my friends, because now I live in Florida, and a lot of my friends that I grew up with when I was younger and a teenager and in high school and middle school, they are all over the world now. But I've noticed that when we get together online, we still prefer to have, we invested in second monitors and screens so that we could
Yeah.
have video of whatever we're doing together. So it's like we're in the same room again, because that's the closest thing we can get without having to hop on a
Right.
plane.
Yeah.
But without that connection is so far gone, to where there are people where we'll meet online and they'll say, hey, why don't we do this together or play this game together? Because I think so, as somebody who likes video games and enjoys them, I think that the reason I enjoy them is because they permit me to have interaction with people who I can't see every day anymore. I don't like to use the game to escape from the rest of the world. I like to use it as another tool for connection, because it is
I've
hard to
never
connect with a
heard
lot of people.
anyone say that. Like, I didn't script this with Sam. I've never heard anybody say that about games, because usually it's escapism, right?
It is, yeah. And so if you ever look at the games I have in my library, they're usually silly, they're nonsensical, they're fun, but they are always either party game oriented or multiplayer oriented. They're oriented towards groups of people getting together to have a laugh, and that
cool.
is what I enjoy.
That's awesome. That's a good
But,
perspective.
The main reason I do it is, again, a lot of my friends are all over the world, and hopping on a plane every weekend is not convenient for the majority of the world. So getting together once a week to say, why don't we do this for a couple hours? We'll throw on our
That's
cameras. We'll all have a laugh together, and maybe we'll and then by the end of the night, we all turn out. We'll catch up, say, "Hi, how's the family? What has your son been doing recently? Oh, they're 5 years old and they're starting kindergarten." It's a really enjoyable way to stay connected.
That's cool.
But so many people use it as a negative tool. So I think all these things are very useful to be able to maintain those connections. And I think, at least I like to believe, that's what a lot of these things were designed for initially. That was there was a positive intention in the creation of these things. But because when you create convenience, you can also create the abuse of that convenience. And I think that's where the negative portions start to build up.
Tom, do you, before we let, we both have to go, but we could talk to you for the next 3 hours.
Yeah, I probably have about 15 more ideas I already came up with
oh
in this
yeah.
whole conversation.
Well, we will do it again. And
So
Sam, I
like
love listening to the way
having
you
family
dialed it
dinner, Tom. How many
in. Hmm.
times a week do you set purposeful family dinner during a week? And how many times do you think
4 is our
Americans
minimum.
on average have a dinner at least one time a week?
Right. Great question. Right now we're at 4 minimum, usually 5 or 6. We're doing really good. Uh, 3 years ago, the opposite, all because I was in my active addiction of drinking and drugging, and just the lifestyle was, I was home most of the time, but I was out in the shop, and I need a few more minutes, or all these excuses. So addiction definitely separated our family for a long time. My wife, who's never drank in her life, we don't do alcohol at all, and I was living that life for about 10 years. So about 10 years of not doing good with family dinners, and even when we did, I was very distracted, and my phone was sitting right in my lap. In the last 30 months, we've been getting better and better and better on being intentional, where now it's like no phones at the table. We're going to ask how each other's day is. And I've got a 16, a 13, and a 9-year-old right now.
But
Precious
that's
years for
hard.
my children.
I give you a lot of props for that because
It's taken
yeah,
a lot of
that's
work. I
hard.
mean, I tell you, I got a nonprofit, I got a business, I got a lot of things going on. So yeah, and it's a tool, like you said. There's nothing wrong with these things if they're used properly, but the abuse comes in where it's like, oh, I was looking at a text that was important for work. Oh, now I'm curious. What's
Yep.
this
Well, and I think
notification? And
that's where
now
the
I'm down a
boundaries
rabbit
comes
trail.
in, you know?
Right. Right. And I'm down a
Yeah.
rabbit trail right when my daughter or son was starting to open up about something going on in their life with anxiety or depression or whatever they're going through. And I missed it. As a father, I missed it because some stupid reel took me off a rabbit
Yeah.
trail, not because the work email or the work call, but the rabbit trail. So that's where we got to set these. And so I set on my phone a 1 hour a day social media total,
And you
all
know what?
social
Well, this
media
is
together.
actually this is something that I practice too because I think it's better for me and it helps me maintain healthier relationships with the people I'm close with. And this would actually, so part of Dr. N, because I don't think I've ever told you this exactly, but part of a lot of the time when you're messaging me and I don't see it for a long period of time is if I am with someone, I put my phone on do not disturb. If I am ever with
Yeah.
someone doing anything for any reason, I put it on do not disturb, emergency contacts only, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, if my mother, if I get a call
Yeah.
from my stepfather saying, "Oh, my mom is having an issue or she's in the hospital," then I'll receive that. But beyond that, I don't see it. I don't receive it. It immediately goes and filed away for later because I want to give my
Mhm.
attention to the person that I'm with. And I know that if the moment I pick it up and start looking, I'll start scrolling and trying to read every notification I've got. And then
Yeah.
now my attention is not on the person I'm actually trying to build that connection with. It is on my
Mhm.
device.
Awesome.
And then they don't feel important
Mm-hmm.
because something else is more important. Here's a little box that we build and we sell these, and they've helped fundraise actually for our nonprofit, but it's called the Connect Box. So my kids are very good about saying, "Hey Dad, is your phone in the Connect
Awesome.
Box?" And so when it's in there and it's on
Awesome.
silent, they know it's not in Dad's pocket, it's not on the counter, but it's in the Connect Box. Super simple. It takes apart real easy. You can take it on vacation with you, but when I know that it's in there, my kids know it's in there. Uh, it's
It
magical.
changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever.
You
It's
flip right
awesome.
back
It
to the
changes the whole dynamic.
1970s or 80s or even before the early 90s.
Yeah, now I've controlled the phone and told it what to do instead of
Yeah.
it telling me what
Mm-hmm.
to do. And now I'm engaged. And just like during this podcast, we give each other this respect during this time because it's our we're doing a
Exactly.
podcast.
And
But when I go home, it's usually when you go home around people you love that those are the ones you take for granted. And you're like, hey, I just got to check one more call, one more email. And then all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night and it's bedtime.
yeah.
And you're like, oh, I didn't even ask how my daughter is
Well,
doing. I didn't see how
and part of my philosophy too is I've also decided, and this is mostly for my own, because I have a bad habit of once I start working, I will continue to work until the work is done. And a lot of the time
Mhm.
that can consume my time to where I will lose track of time and I'll be working on something till 3 a.m. with work at 6
Mhm.
a.m. the next morning. And then I am in a very bad pattern of my sleep schedule's mixed up. I'm grouchy. So I've actually
Yeah.
begun, and I want to say it was about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I no longer work past a certain time. If it is 1 hour up until bedtime, work is completely shut off. I do not look at work.
Yeah.
I don't touch work. I don't think about work. if something comes up work oriented, I will get to it the next day. I have to make sure I have that decompression time, and I have to make sure I set that boundary. That way I don't end up working late into the night and then messing myself up for the next day or the rest of the week potentially.
That's so good. And that's where a lot of your confidence, I can tell, also comes in with you've set this. That's what you do. You've got that discipline. That's what you do. I get up at this time. I set my alarm, and I'm not just a feather blown in the wind on what do I feel like. This is what I do. I have a certain time I do this, a certain time I do this, and my alarm goes off at this time, and I get up and do it again. And we have days where we miss that once in a while, but for the most part, when you live a lifestyle that's disciplined, it gets this sort of self-confidence. It's like, I know where Tom's going to be at this time of day on this day of the week because this is what Tom does. A lot of my life, I didn't live like that. But hey, on a few things as we finish, because I know we'll do one of these again. If I had never heard of your book, tell me a couple things. When does it come out? How do I find a copy? If you could touch on how to find where to purchase your book.
Release is going to be July 14. I had to convert it in my head the date. July 14. We are doing a launch event, but that will be when the book is also released for everyone. You can find it on Amazon primarily or through our website, lifeisaclassroom.net. We have a link to where you can sign up.
And I think the early release is June 30th, correct?
Yes, for the digital version. Yeah, so there's a digital version that will be June 30th. You can sign up on lifeisaclassroom.net. There's an emailer list that will give you newsletters and updates as to when it's released. And you can also find it on Amazon.com. You can pre-order it. It is Bloom Where You Are by Dr. Damien Nesser and Samuel Geiger. And it will be available on Amazon, both in digital and paper copy, and you can pre-order the digital now.
I'm excited.
And we are on all social media, and it's a pleasure to have talked to you, and you're just an amazing person. I knew as soon as I hit that room, we were in Amberly Lago's event, Unstoppable Mastermind, Texas, a couple months back, and as soon as I got off the elevator, you were standing there just enjoying looking at the whole room, and I'm like, I'm supposed to talk to him, and that's how we met. And you're an amazing person. You got a great family. Can't wait to get on with Cross and the four of us, and we can do a Bloom Moment session. We're going to do Bloom Moment sessions all around the world. Influencers are going to share what they like about our book and how it's impacted them. Doesn't have to be a great moment. Could be saying, hey, the book really spoke to me because there's coaching pages for depression, anxiety, family dynamic, sleep deprivation. God knows I went through a lot of that with my mom. And listen, young people, I don't care if you're an adult or a young person. There's 56 here, which is me, 46, which is Tom, 26, which is Sam. You got 3 generations in one picture right here. And I'll tell you what, if you don't get the right sleep, it's awful because you're going to be a different person. And it's almost like like taking a drug, because it changes your mindset, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Absolutely. I just got to tell you real quick, Doctor, don't ever change. I love that you are so down to earth and so humble. When I first met you in that room too, I'd flown down there from the state of Washington here to Texas by myself, didn't know anybody. And I think I'd met maybe 1 or 2, and you walked in, we talked. And, being a contractor all my life, I did get out of high school, but that was about it. I did like 1 class in community college. But let me just say, I'm good at construction. I'm very, not so much in a lot of other areas. Don't go into politics or history or sports or a lot of things. I'm kind of like trivia. Oh, I'm like, don't ask me to play trivia. I'm going to get like 99% of them wrong, but that's okay. I'm finally okay with it. But you made me feel very important, and I mean that sincerely. You were in the moment. We talked, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. It seemed like we bumped into each other a little bit later.
We probably talked for about 25 minutes. And
Yeah, and you just down to earth, normal, but yet you have completed something like you said 5 different times of getting a degree, and
I can't
that's awesome. I
sling
think
a
sometimes in life
hammer.
we can.
I don't want to sling a hammer. Like my brothers
Yeah.
ask me, all of them have asked me, don't you have because I'm the youngest, 4 older brothers, don't you
Yeah.
have a set of tools? I go, absolutely not. I'm never going to buy a set of tools. I'm not going to go, what am I going to do that for? Pretend that I'm a like craftsman like you guys do, like you pretend. They know how to do a little stuff, and everybody, those people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could
Well,
fix
I mean,
little
coming-
simple
Yeah.
stuff, but listen, they're not going to be Tom Lyman construction company. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's on a team,
Yeah.
and everybody's got their strengths. So young people, last point, hire out your what? Weaknesses. Play to your strengths.
There you
Hire
go.
your weaknesses. Dr. N is never, ever, ever going to be a carpenter. Ever.
Yeah, I mean, in full circle, like you said at the beginning, everybody's different.
Yeah.
Imagine if we were all the same.
Sam and I
Our
connected
differences
because
are what make us strong.
I suck at technology, like the background of technology. I'm good at social media.
Yeah.
I want to be great at social media someday. I'm not there yet, but I listen to people and I watch people and I want to improve. But as far as the background of technology, I was on with our person that's, Karen in London is helping us with our podcast, and she was driving us through stuff that Sam helped us with and stuff, and it's way beyond me. Like, she had to get in my computer on team viewer type of thing and show me how to do it. I don't know how to do this, but if she talked to Sam about that, they're on the same wavelength. But I don't want to hear that conversation. It stresses me out. Sam knows that. That's your stuff.
Right.
That's your gig, right? I don't want to do that. But you put me in front of people and talk, and I will sell a dead man a suit.
Well, I love it. Thank you both so much for being on this today. I learned a lot. Life is a classroom, and even right here, we experienced that today on the Joy Hour podcast. So thank you, and I look forward to doing this again. Any last closing comments?
Learn, dream, and achieve,
in.
and give back to someone who can't give back to you in your classroom of life.
Love it.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode on the Joy Hour podcast. Don't forget to check out some of our other episodes for more powerful discussions. Want to keep up with new episodes? Be sure to subscribe. And as always, we'd appreciate it if you like, share, and comment your favorite part of this episode right down below.